Hi everyone, I'm Helen Kelly with Wayne County Human Services. I work out in the Pocono Rep, and today I just want to show you how to go about and change someone's status. It is the same across the board for all statuses, with the exception of enrolling someone, because if you're doing that, you're actually enrolling them from the queue and accepting that service. But for everything else, you can do it one of two ways. On the active queue, which are everyone that's looking for permanent housing solutions, that are literally homeless, you will see that they can either be new, so everyone starts off as new. They can be reviewed, they can be engaging, or they can be verifying. So depending on where you are in the stage of the process of communicating with someone on the queue will kind of dictate what that should be. The other set of statuses are found on the historical queue. So these are people that are no longer looking for permanent housing solutions. They have either been enrolled, which is done through a separate process. They have been closed. They have turned away. All of those sorts of outcomes. So all of those folks are here. If someone was put on historical by mistake, you can go ahead and change that status back to something that would be on the active queue, and that would just take care of that. But basically, if you want to change a status, you could do it one of two ways. One would be changed queue status. So you can see what I did. You go to that radio button and change queue status. Okay, so from there, you can do engaging, verifying, reviewed, like I just said. So these are the different ways that someone could still be on the active queue. So let's say I looked at this person, she's not appropriate for whatever reason. I put a note in, and she was reviewed. So it's not like she's brand new that no one looked at her, but she would be reviewed. So I would go here, I would save. I could save successfully. You probably won't see it show up on your queue until you refresh it, just as a note. But let's say for that same person, change queue status. Let's say I decide this person might be appropriate and I have left her a message or I talked to her on the phone, and I'm going to be trying to continually try to establish that rapport and possibly do, an intake and an enrollment. So then I would change it to engaging. Once I have started to reach out to that person, then I just know on my own radar as a, let's say, rapid rehousing provider, I'm going to continue to establish contact with that person if I haven't been able to do so yet. Then verifying this is mostly going to be for your permanent supportive housing folks. So let's say they decide someone is eligible, that person wants to be a part of the program, but it's going to take a couple of weeks to get that disability documentation. That person is spoken for. They don't really need assistance from other providers at that time. So it would be verifying, and basically we would know that that person, generally speaking, would be moving toward that enrollment and getting pulled off the queue. That said, these can also work in reverse order. So let's say you're verifying, but you don't have that person's disability status. They're still eligible, let's say, for rapid rehousing. They're just not eligible for the type of bed that you have. Then you could go ahead and put them back down to reviewed, if that makes sense. Okay, so we'll save. That is one way that you could do it. You could also do it this way. If you are in the person's queue record already for something else and you don't want to have to jump back into the queue to do it, right here is where you'll see reviewed or status or whatever the case may be. Okay, so then you could go ahead, those 4 choices that you just saw there, they're also here, so you can do it from this screen. This just might be a little bit more labor intensive if you weren't already in the queue record. But from here, this is really the only place where you can close someone out. You won't have this option from the queue. So if you want to close someone out, and then you select Y, so either they did not meet their the homeless definition anymore, they deceased, sometimes let's say we reach out to someone consistently, they're not returning calls. Once that is documented on the queue, for 90 days of no contact with any provider, despite attempts to reach that person then would be removed from the queue, and they would be removed by this method. Likewise, if you are going down the queue and you're figuring out who might be appropriate for your program, and you talk to someone and they say, oh, you always want to find out on that call, like, where did they sleep last night? Because just because they were homeless when they had gotten on the CQ, if it took a few days to reach out for them, they may not be homeless anymore. So in talking with them, you find out they actually started staying with their parent. So at that time, you would do a note, which is a different video, but you would do a note that this person doesn't meet homeless criteria anymore. They're getting removed from the queue. And then you would do so by going here to closed, did not meet homeless criteria, and then they would be removed from the queue. While talking with that person, though, you would certainly want to let them know that should their situation change again and they do find themselves homeless again in the future, please do call back or go to their access site, so that their record can be updated. Okay. Now, this other option for a status change for enrolled, this should really only be used for the folks that are not in HMIS and enrolling and are required to enroll from the queue. Meaning, let's say we're working with a provider and we find out during the scrub call that they're a non-traditional service provider was able to assist this person. They don't necessarily have access to HMIS. They can't accept a service from the queue, but we know that this person was enrolled nonetheless. So then perhaps that regional manager or whoever knows about that situation would then go in, they would do enrolled, and then they could be enrolled into any of these types of situations. And then that person, their status would be enrolled as opposed to closed, which is more of a negative connotation. Okay. We want to make sure, though, that we're not doing this for our programs that require that people come from the queue. There's a different way to go ahead and change that through accepting a service, which in turn will automatically change this status to enrolled. Okay. So I think that that's just about it. I do want to point out that anytime there is a status change whatsoever, that should also always be accompanied by a note. There's another video, like I said, going into how to do that note, but just so that you know that they go hand in hand. There might be times that you have notes that don't necessarily warrant a status change, and that's fine, and that's certainly encouraged. But please pair any status change whatsoever with a note. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful, and have a great day, everyone.